Picture a quiet house on a Sunday afternoon. Every drawer in the kitchen is full. The closets overflow with boxes that haven't been opened in years. The garage holds three broken bicycles, two old televisions, a collection of magazines from the early 2000s, and a box of cables for devices that no longer exist. Most people who visit would see clutter, but the person who lives there sees something entirely different. They see memory. They see potential. They see pieces of a life carefully preserved against the unstoppable current of time. This isn't hoarding. This isn't laziness. This is a deeply human psychological pattern that reveals profound truths about identity, loss, memory, and the human need to hold on to what once mattered. People who never throw anything away share a recognizable pattern. They keep birthday cards from decades ago, ticket stubs from concerts they barely remember attending, childhood toys with broken parts, handwritten letters from people long gone. They hold on to furniture that doesn't fit the room, clothes that haven't fit for years, and tools for hobbies they abandoned. To outsiders, the question is always the same. Why not simply let go? The answer, when examined through the lens of psychology, is far more complex and far more human than it might first appear. These individuals are not simply failing to clean up. They are engaged in a sophisticated emotional process that most people never consciously recognize in themselves. Psychologists who study attachment to objects have identified a phenomenon known as the endowment effect. Research by behavioral economist Richard Thaler demonstrated that people assign significantly more value to objects they already own compared to identical objects they don't. Once something belongs to a person, its perceived worth increases dramatically, regardless of its practical function. But there is something deeper at work in people who never throw anything away. Studies in environmental psychology show that objects serve as external memory systems. They aren't just things. They are anchors to specific emotional states, relationships, and versions of ourselves that no longer exist in the present. When someone holds onto a worn concert shirt from 20 years ago, they are holding onto a moment in time when they felt a particular way about the world. Discarding the shirt feels, on a neurological level, like discarding that moment itself. Consider a woman named Elena, a 58-year-old retired schoolteacher living in a mid-sized city. Her adult children have gently suggested, on multiple occasions, that she should clear out the storage room in her home. Inside, they see chaos. Stacked boxes, outdated technology, children's school projects from the 1990s. But when Elena opens that storage room, she doesn't see chaos. She sees her daughter's first painting. She sees the Christmas decorations she and her husband hung together for 30 years before he passed. She sees the textbooks from her own university days when she was 20 years old and the world felt full of possibility. Every object in that room holds an invisible weight that only she can feel. To remove any single item would be to lose a thread connecting her to a person she used to be or a person she loved. The storage room is not disorder. It is an archive of her emotional life. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, long before he became famous for his work on flow, conducted a foundational study on the meaning of household objects. He found that people across different cultures and backgrounds consistently used their possessions to communicate identity, continuity, and personal history. Objects weren't decorative. They were autobiographical. For people who struggle to throw things away, this autobiographical function of objects is heightened. There is a psychological concept known as the extended self, introduced by consumer researcher Russell Belk. It proposes that humans define themselves not just through their personalities and memories, but through their possessions. What a person owns becomes part of who they are. This is why losing a meaningful object can feel like losing a piece of oneself, and why throwing things away can feel like an act of self-erasure. This becomes especially pronounced during times of grief and transition. People who have lost a parent, ended a long relationship, or experienced a significant life change often find themselves unable to part with objects connected to what was lost. The object becomes a proxy for the person or the era it represents. As long as the object exists, that part of life has not fully ended. What is fascinating is that people who never throw anything away rarely exist in isolation. They find one another. Flea markets, vintage shops, antique fairs, estate sales, and online communities dedicated to secondhand objects are filled with people who share this particular relationship with things. These spaces operate as communities with their own rituals and values. The shared belief at the center of all of them is the same. Objects have lives. They carry meaning. They deserve to be preserved rather than discarded. Within these communities, the tendency to keep things is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a virtue, a sensitivity, an acknowledgement that the physical world holds emotional weight that the digital world cannot replicate. People within these communities develop a specialized way of seeing. They look at an old wooden chair and see craftsmanship from a specific era. They look at a box of vinyl records and hear the music of a generation. They look at a rusted tin toy and see a child who once held it. This ability to see the human story embedded in objects creates powerful social bonds between people who share it. They speak a language that others don't quite understand, and that shared language becomes the foundation of genuine community. Modern culture has developed a particular relationship with disposal. The minimalism movement, with its insistence that owning less leads to living more, has become enormously influential. Entire industries have been built around the idea that clearing out possessions is a path to psychological freedom. The message, delivered constantly through books and television programs and social media, is that letting go is growth. But this narrative misses something important. For the people who keep the birthday cards and the broken bicycles and the boxes of old photographs, the act of holding on is not avoidance. It is a form of honoring. They are making a quiet argument against a culture that treats everything as replaceable, everything as temporary, everything as ultimately disposable. There is, of course, a spectrum. When the accumulation of objects begins to interfere with daily functioning, when it causes distress rather than comfort, psychology recognizes it as a condition that benefits from professional support. But for many people, the tendency to keep things falls well within the range of healthy human behavior. It reflects an emotional intelligence that recognizes the difference between an object and what the object represents. In the end, the person who never throws anything away is telling a story. Every object in their home is a word in that story. The collection, taken together, is an autobiography written not in language, but in things. It is a record of everyone they have loved, every version of themselves they have lived through, every moment they were not quite ready to release into the past. Perhaps the question worth asking is not why some people keep so much, but what the rest of us are too quickly discarding when we convince ourselves that letting go is always the healthier choice.